G'day and welcome to the Invest Motivation Podcast. My name is Robert Gowdy and I have with me
Amy Lehman.
As usual. Thanks for joining, Amy.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, Rob.
Yeah.
You have been off gallivanting around the globe.
Yeah, it's my fault. I've been away, been on holidays. Went overseas, went to Canada with my parents and my brother, and we had a family holiday, which was good, taking our opportunities while everyone's fit enough and well enough to do it. So that's what we did.
And where did you go and would you recommend it?
Canada, the view's incredible, food's great, the coffee's ordinary compared to Melbourne and Australia. An amazing trip, amazing views, and then did the cruise up via the Inside Passage up to Alaska, which was really cool as well. So just some of the most amazing sights I've seen.
Yeah, and every photo that you were sending through to us back here was just like desktop worthy screensaver stuff.
I think some of the views that I saw really felt like they weren't real.
Yeah.
Lake Louise is just off the chart, so if you haven't been there, definitely do a quick Google. It's just extraordinary. The colour of the water, the glacial, the colour of the water based on what they call it, the rock flowers, the glaciers grind their way down the hills is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's just the most impressive backdrop I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But as you travel around the world, you learn that people are awesome and friendly and nice, and so it was a great experience that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah, good fun, great time with my parents, which is nice. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So what's been happening in the office?
A lot. I think normally when you go away, it's normally time for everyone here to kind of catch up and get ahead a little bit. But this time, I don't know, all of this podcasting effort we're doing, which is great. We're just seeing so much new client coming in and existing clients, and it's great.
And seeing so many scenarios. And today's chat is about a bit of a case study where we're trying to help out some parents. They had the question, they booked in for an appointment with us, whether they should be guarantor for their son. And it turned into a really good conversation, and it extended far beyond what they were. The question they came in was, should we go guarantor? What are the risks? And I suppose I span it round and posed the question, should your son be buying?
Yeah.
And I went through and did all the calculations to work out whether it's a good idea that he does this, and what does it mean for him, and what does it mean for the parents.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, before we get into it, on behalf of the Investor Motivation Podcast, we would like to pay our respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we do record this podcast, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging.
Cool. Thanks, Amy. Now, I think we need to give some context for the people, particularly those that are in the larger capital cities, that we are country Victoria. We are regional.
Yep.
We don't have the prices that you guys have down there. But from a cash flow point of view, from a risk point of view, it's still all the same.
Yeah.
So the calculations are still very similar in terms of the way that I would assess things, but just know that the numbers come down, because I know when I've done a TikTok video and spoken about renting and buying, and you get some big backlash because the prices for rent locally here, whilst it's still there's still demand for rentals and it's hard to get good rentals, it's just so different down to Melbourne or Sydney or some of the other places.
Yeah, so definitely. And the income obviously does vary as well, but it's very disproportionate for the city. The income isn't enough.
Yeah. So the case study is older couple, full pensioners, lovely people, and their son lives in a smaller rural town than what Horsham is, and is renting and has no deposit, and has a family, and and has fun, and rent is about $350 per week.
Yep.
Well, actually, it is $350 per week.
Yep.
And keen, like all of us, I think owning their own home is obviously something that we all strive for. And they're keen to have the security to know that they will not get kicked out. If they want to put a picture or a painting on the wall, they can do that.
Yeah.
So obviously looking at the options.
Yeah.
Now,
and that's probably a good point before we keep going, that a lot of this is about personal lifestyle choice as well as the financial. There's obviously the numbers, which is what people come to us for, but we will always highlight, people's lifestyle goals, and if it really is too much, having that rental stress of, having to move potentially. There was something on the radio yesterday morning that I was listening to, that a couple in Melbourne have moved 3 times in the last 12 months. So there's a lot of that recycling of stuff happening. So it's definitely personal as well as everything financial will cover off on.
That's the problem in Australia, that, to rent here, the longest contract you're going to get for residential might be 2 years.
Yeah.
In Europe, you can have 30-year lease contracts where you can lock in for potentially the rest of your life. Here in Australia, you don't have that security, and moving, what a pain in the arse. It's just really ordinary. So I think there should be some changes there that provide people some longer term security, particularly, it's annoying for a single or a couple, but imagine young children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, packing up is hard enough, by yourself.
Definitely.
So the scenario is, the case study is $350 per week, and that is $18,200 per year.
Yeah.
So I then asked the couple, said, right, what would it cost for your son to buy the house that they'd be comfortable with, which might be a bit larger, a bit newer, a bit nicer perhaps. And they said, we agreed on a number of 350, which I know everyone listening in the big capital cities will say, whereabouts is this? I won't go into too much detail because it gives too much away, but we're talking very small country town. We're talking 1,000 people, 2,000 people type towns.
Remote.
Yeah, remote stuff. There is not an Aldi down the road. There's not a Coles or a Woolies, an IGA if you are lucky. So 350. Now, there isn't a deposit. The mum and dad would have to go guarantor to actually make it work. And at 7%, the interest alone would be $25,000.
Yeah.
Now, I bring up the Money Smart website and put in 350, 7% over a 25-year. Now, this chap was not far off 50. 25-year loan is not going to be ideal.
No.
But beside the point, let's park that one. But 25-year loan, 350 at 7%. Essentially, the first year's repayment is $30,000, of which $5,000 is principal and $25,000 is interest. So it's a big number.
Yeah.
Now,
and especially going from that $350 per week being $18,000 to now $30,000.
Correct. But I'm not done yet. This is part of the problem. As a homeowner, you are responsible for rates, insurance, the water service charge, and the maintenance. And we estimated that, and of course, rates and so on is cheaper in the small towns. Yeah. I estimated that at $4,000 per year. So we are comparing $18,200 to $34,000. So when I explained to the parents, I said, well, cash flow on a weekly basis, and it's always good to drill down onto a weekly basis so you really understand what it means to your lifestyle and your cash flow. Yeah. That $350 for housing turns into $650 plus. I didn't even take into account stamp duty. $650 plus per week. Yeah. And I said at that, and they just said, there's no way he can afford that. But of course, there's more than likely the banks will say, yes, you can have it. So this is one of the issues I have. Who's going to, when it comes to purchasing a property in Australia, who's going to tell you no? Yeah. Your parents, our family want us to own our own homes and be safe and secure with security. Yeah. The banks always will. Yeah. Everyone will say yes. Yeah. But at a $300 plus increase in weekly expenditure for housing means that there is no coffee down the street, lunch with the kids, fuel for the motorbikes, and all the extra things that make life just that little bit extra.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, without knowing the income and everything, because that would be the biggest factor of can you afford it or not. But doubling expenses for the same thing, I guess. I guess one's got security, one doesn't, but yes, that's the biggest call that this individual just needs to make, really. Can they afford it? And if no, well, what's broken with the current situation? That's
right. No, I've been renting for 4 years, and where I rent, it feels like home. And over married life and so on, the houses, I was in 2 houses. One was the 3-bedroom weatherboard, the first home, very modest and very nice. And the second home, it was a large family. There's 4 children. It was a bigger home and new. We built it. But in terms of how happy we were between one or the other, there was no difference.
No, I don't. Yeah, there's no correlation between the house you live in and how happy you are. There
Absolutely.
shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, I think there's not, and it might make us feel good for a little bit, but there is no correlation between well-being, happiness, contentment, and the size of the house or the new of the house.
I think there is a probably correlation between sometimes renting, especially in Melbourne, when you do have that threat of having to move all the time, that's a big happiness player, and
absolutely
there's that rental anxiety they're talking about now, fearing moving all the time, so that's definitely a factor. But
and some of the stuff you see online where the quality of the rentals is just hideous, and but in terms of what we're talking about here for this this case study, we really, I suppose, they came in for one thing, and I said, well, let's talk about this bit before that.
Yeah.
What is your son's lifestyle going to be like after this? Is he just going to be stressed to the eyeballs, having to take on a second job, and all of a sudden lifestyle's gone?
Yeah. And if, as you say, as they said it to you, he won't be able to afford it. So being guarantor on that for the parents, it is then, the son's in that situation, and then you're going to have to either top up those extra repayments, extra $350 a week from them, or, the loan is default, and then you mentioned that they were using their house as security for the loan as well?
That's what they'd have to do. So, most parents don't have the free dollars to say, here is money to buy a home.
Yeah.
So they were putting up their home, the equity in their home, as security. So I'd like you now, perhaps, Amos, to cover off on some of those things. And what is the risk, would you say, for the parents if they did go guarantor?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is they both can't afford to pay for those repayments, weekly, monthly, whatever they might be.
So the son and the parents?
Yes.
So son defaults.
If the son can't pay it, as guarantor, they have an obligation to meet those repayments. If they also cannot meet those repayments, the security of the loan, which is their home, is up for grabs. So they would the bank would, default that house, sell the parents' house.
Or sell the son's house.
Sell the son's house, And if that obviously doesn't cover the cost of the loan, then it's the parents' house that's up. Yeah.
So, if it went to negative equity, they're going to come back and say, parents, well, you've now got to, you've now got to give us that 20, 30, 50 grand that's the shortfall.
Yeah, especially if money's tight. That house is $350, lives in it for a year, does no maintenance because they can't afford to. If that house goes backwards and sells for less than what they bought it for, that money will come from the equity of the parents' house.
Yep, and that's where it puts the parents. That's part of the very big risk.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario, but that's what they've come to us for.
And I know what will happen in that scenario. That more than likely the parents will find a way to help, fund it so it doesn't default.
Yeah.
Which means they're either eating into their own equity in the house, utilising the home equity release scheme through the government, through Centrelink, or they're having to chip into their own cash flow or other financial retirement assets, which again puts them at risk.
Yeah.
For their own retirement and also future aged care needs.
Yeah, biting into that, if they have superannuation, that's supposed to be funding the rest of their lives. So, there's many, many risks to consider for guarantors. Yeah. So we would recommend that you firstly seek advice on what you do, going guarantor. In this day and age, probably the last 5 years, I've seen parents and grandparents have all, had some type of pressure or requests or questions around, deposits, going guarantor, and variations of those things to help younger people get into the market, which I can understand, because we just have that feeling that, the property market just scoots ahead, and if we don't get in, it just keeps going up. So there's definitely the anxiety around, if I don't get in now, I will never get in. And that's where the requests come from. But we need to take into account
the parents and the grandparents' situation? Does it put them at risk for their retirement,
Yep.
for future needs, whatever they are?
And we will always, as financial advisors, act in the best interest of the client sitting in front of us. So, as well as making sure they know their whole family is looked after. But if we don't think that going guarantor is a good idea and that it will affect their scenario long term, we'll definitely let that be known and make sure we're protecting them as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Any other parts that we should consider?
No.
I had a good chat, and this was a younger person came in, and first home buyer. We
Yep.
spoke about the super home saver scheme,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a whole different topic on this, but they went to the bank, and single person, good income, huge amount of money. They could borrow 500 grand. But what intrigued me, and I thought it was worth bringing up,
Yeah.
what they were calling the borrowing limit, they were calling it, this is your borrowing power. And they made it sound
Power to
like
you.
Exactly. It was like I'm going to empower you to go and spend all of your power
Yeah.
to go into 500 grand worth of debt. Over the next 30 years, you're going to pay us back 800 grand of interest. Thank you, profit for the banks. And I just thought the terminology was really bloody ordinary. And it's really a psychological twist, like you're really loading the gun for people to go out and say, yep, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I can go up to that.
Yeah.
Now, no doubt people have probably had to do that to get into the market. But imagine having up to $500,000 of borrowing capacity and saying, well, I don't want to borrow that much and I'll find something at a lower level.
Yeah.
And again, I can hear all the people in the major capital cities going, yeah, but Rob, you don't understand. And I don't, because I don't live there and haven't had to buy in Melbourne or Sydney or Brizzy. So I do understand that.
Yeah.
I'm empathetic towards it. But yeah, it's a psychological play by the banks.
It is. And yeah, there's, no matter what decisions you make in life is always about the trade-off. So if you're, I don't know, this may sound really not empathetic, but you know that the city's an expensive place, but you choose to live there and you choose it because of the lifestyle and the amazing opportunities that it presents. There is always the country. And
Yeah, but that's where the jobs are. And that's
Yeah,
that
right.
That's that
there's
problem.
all the trade-offs in life.
Cool. Very good, Amy. I reckon we've covered that off enough, and we will, keep helping people as we always do.
Yeah.
If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, we're more than happy to do that. And on our website, we now have 666 videos on there that we've been accumulating over the last 13 years. It's a special number for Iron Maiden fans like me. But if you've got any questions, let us know. Leave a comment wherever you can find us, and we're happy to cover that. And go and source out some of the other information we've done over the last 1 and a bit decades of doing videos and educating people. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.